Joan leaned back, crossing her arms. What do you want to do? Noah exhaled sharply. We'll watch. If there's the traitor close, we need proof before we act. Chapter 14. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones we fight with others. They're the ones we fight with ourselves, against the walls we've built, the fears we've nurtured, and the hope we're too scared to believe in. The training grounds were quieter today, a stark contrast to the usual flurry of activity. Most of the wolves were out on patrol or assisting with the pack's preparations against the rogues. I stood near the edge of the field, absently stretching, trying to work out the tension in my shoulders. My thoughts were heavy, tangled in the web of everything that had happened recently, the rogues and Noah. He'd been everywhere lately, not in an overbearing way, but always in the background, watching, supporting, ensuring I was okay without ever outright saying it. It was in the way he stayed a little longer at the training grounds when I was sparring, or how his eyes would flick to me during meetings, as if checking to make sure I was holding up. It was in the quiet moments, when he didn't say anything but was just there. I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me wanted to lean into it, to let myself feel whatever this was that was growing between us. But the other part, the louder, more guarded part, wanted to push him away, because letting him in meant opening myself up to the possibility of being hurt again. And I wasn't sure I could survive that. Later that afternoon, I found myself walking through the forest, drawn to the familiar comfort of the river. The sound of rushing water always had a way of calming me, of quieting the noise in my head. As I approached the clearing, I stopped short. Noah was there, sitting on a fallen log near the edge of the water. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. But he looked up before I could, his gaze meeting mine. He smiled, a small, genuine smile that made something in my chest tighten. You can come closer, he said, his voice warm. I don't bite. Not without good reason, anyway. I huffed a quiet laugh, stepping into the clearing. You're here a lot lately, I said, sitting on a rock a few feet away. It's a good spot, he replied, leaning back on his hands. Quiet. Peaceful. Helps me think. What are you thinking about? I asked before I could stop myself. He hesitated, his gaze drifting back to the water. The pack. The rogues. How to keep everyone safe. He paused, then added quietly, you. My breath caught, and I turned my head to look at him. His expression was calm, but there was something deeper in his eyes, something that made it hard to look away. Me? I asked, my voice softer now. He nodded. You've been through so much, Sage. And yet you're still here. Still fighting. I want to make sure you're okay. His words shouldn't have surprised me, but they did. And they hit harder than I expected. Because no one had ever looked at me like that before, with concern, yes, but also with something deeper. Something that felt like care. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile. You don't have to worry about me. He tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. Maybe not. But I do anyway. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that neither of us seemed ready to address. I wanted to say something, to thank him or brush it off, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I looked away, staring at the water as my thoughts churned. That evening, as I sat in my room, replaying the conversation in my mind, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I was drawn to him. Not just because of his strength or his leadership, but because of the way he saw me. The way he looked at me like I wasn't just another wolf in the pack, but someone who mattered. Someone worth protecting. And that terrified me. Because if I let myself feel this, if I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be my mate, it meant opening myself up to the possibility of losing him. It meant trusting someone again after everything that had happened with Ben. My wolf stirred, her presence calm but insistent. He's different, she said, her voice a quiet murmur in the back of my mind. You know he is. I shook my head. It's not that simple. You're making it complicated, she replied. You're scared. And I get it. But you can't keep running forever. I sighed, leaning back against the wall. My wolf was right, of course. She always was. But knowing that didn't make it any easier. The next day, I found myself sparring with Joan in the training grounds. She was relentless, as always, pushing me to my limits with every move. But even as we fought, my mind kept drifting back to Noah, his words, his gaze, the way he made me feel seen. You're distracted, Joan said, ducking under my swing and tapping me lightly on the side with her elbow. "I'm fine," I muttered, stepping back to reset my stance. She raised an eyebrow, her grin sharp. "Sure you are. Let me guess, Noah." I glared at her, but she just laughed. "You're so obvious, Sage. It's almost painful to watch." "It's not like that," I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. "Right," Joan said, rolling her eyes. "Keep telling yourself that." As the day wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Joan was right. Maybe I was making things more complicated than they needed to be. Maybe it was time to stop running. But even as the thought crossed my mind, the walls I'd built around my heart held firm. Because letting them down meant taking a risk I wasn't sure I was ready to take. Maybe someday, I thought, watching Noah from across the training grounds. But not today. Chapter 15. Sometimes, it takes chaos to show the world what you're really made of. And sometimes, that chaos burns away more than just your fear. The alarm went up just before dusk. A low, mournful howl echoed through the packlands, cutting through the stillness like a blade. I was in the courtyard when I heard it, sparring with a younger wolf. My body froze for a fraction of a second before instinct took over. My wolf stirred, sharp and alert, her energy rippling through me like an electric current. Noah's voice rang out from the pack house steps, calm but commanding. "They're at the eastern border. Patrol teams, regroup. Joan, take your squad north as backup." "Sage," he turned to me, his eyes meeting mine. "You're with me?" I nodded without hesitation. The fear that had once gripped me in moments like these was gone, replaced by a steady determination. The pack was my family now, and I would fight for it with everything I had. The eastern border was chaos when we arrived. Wolves clashed in a blur of fur and fangs, snarls and growls filling the air. The rogues were vicious, their movements sharp and coordinated, but our wolves held their ground. Noah shifted immediately, his massive black wolf barreling into the fray with a ferocity that sent two rogues scattering. Joan's squad arrived seconds later, reinforcing the line and driving the rogues back toward the treeline. I stayed close to Noah, my wolf poised and ready. A rogue lunged at us, his eyes wild and his teeth bared, but I met him head-on. My wolf surged forward, her claws raking across his side as we collided. He yelped in pain, stumbling back, and I pressed the advantage, pinning him to the ground. "Leave," I growled, my voice a low snarl. "This is our land." The rogue hesitated, his eyes darting to the retreating pack members. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, disappearing into the shadows. Another rogue came at me from the side, but I was ready. I ducked under his swipe, my wolf twisting with a fluidity that surprised even me. With a sharp strike, I knocked him off balance, sending him tumbling to the ground. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of our younger wolves struggling against a much larger rogue. Without thinking, I charged, ramming into the rogue with enough force to send him sprawling. The younger wolf scrambled to safety, and I stood between them, baring my teeth. The rogue snarled but didn't attack again. Instead, he backed away, his eyes narrowing as if memorizing my face before disappearing into the trees. By the time the battle was over, the rogues had retreated, leaving the eastern border littered with signs of the fight. Tufts of fur, claw marks, and the scent of blood hanging heavy in the air. Noah shifted back, his chest heaving as he surveyed the area. His gaze found mine, and for a moment he just stared, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, a small but unmistakable gesture of approval. "Good work, Sage," he said, his voice low but steady. Joan appeared beside him, grinning despite the gash on her arm. "Good work? She was incredible. Did you see her out there? She's a force of nature." I felt heat rise to my cheeks at their praise but managed a small smile. "I just did what needed to be done." "You did more than that," Joan said, clapping me on the shoulder. "The pack's lucky to have you." The other wolves murmured their agreement, their gazes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. It was a strange feeling, being seen like this, not as the broken girl who had been left behind, but as someone strong, someone capable. From the shadows near the treeline, Lyra watched the scene unfold, her nails digging into the bark of a nearby tree. Her wolf paced restlessly in her mind, mirroring her growing frustration. "They're praising her," Lyra muttered, her voice a low hiss. "Like she's one of them. Like she belongs." Her wolf growled softly. She's gaining their favor. If this keeps up, even the elders will change their minds. Lyra's jaw tightened, her mind racing. She had spent years building her reputation, ensuring that she was seen as the perfect choice for the alpha's mate. And yet here was Sage, a wolf with no legacy, no family, stepping into the role Lyra had always believed was hers. "This isn't over," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling with anger. "I won't let her take what's mine." She turned and disappeared into the forest, her thoughts dark and her resolve hardening. That evening, the pack gathered around the fire pit in the courtyard, their spirits high despite the day's events. The battle had been won, and the sense of unity was palpable. I sat on the edge of the circle, listening as the younger wolves recounted their experiences, their voices filled with awe and excitement. Every now and then, one of them would glance at me, their expressions warm with gratitude. Noah sat across from me, his gaze steady as he watched the pack. When our eyes met, he smiled, a small, private thing that sent a flutter through my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. But belonging comes with a price. Chapter 16. Even when you think you've moved on, the ghosts of the past have a way of lingering. And sometimes, those ghosts take the shape of the people closest to you. Noah found Ben near the edge of the forest, sitting on a fallen log with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. The evening was quiet, the air cool and heavy with the scent of pine. Ben's posture was slouched, his head tilted back as he stared at the darkening sky. He didn't look up when Noah approached, but he spoke, his voice rough. "If you're here to lecture me, don't bother." Noah stopped a few feet away, crossing his arms over his chest. "I'm not here to lecture you, Ben. I'm here to talk." Ben huffed a laugh, shaking his head. "Talk? Since when do we talk about anything that matters?" Noah frowned but didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered himself onto the log beside his brother. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional distant howl of a wolf on patrol. Finally, Noah broke the silence. "It's about Sage." Ben's grip on the bottle tightened, his knuckles whitening. "Figured as much," he muttered. "Go on then. Say what you came to say." Noah leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "You know how I feel about her, Ben. You've known for a while." Ben let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I've noticed. Hard not to. The way you look at her." He took a swig from the bottle, the alcohol burning down his throat. "So what, Noah? You want my blessing? My permission? Because I'm not sure I can give you that." "I'm not asking for your permission," Noah said calmly, though his wolf bristled beneath the surface. "I'm asking for your understanding. You left her, Ben. You made that choice. And he paused, struggling to find the right words. "I care about her. I've cared about her for a long time." Ben turned to look at him then, his eyes dark and filled with a storm of emotions, anger, guilt, regret. "I didn't leave her because I didn't care about her," he said quietly. "I left because I wasn't what she needed, and I thought maybe someone else could give her what I couldn't." Noah nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Maybe that someone else is me." Ben's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Noah thought he might lash out. But then his shoulders slumped, and he exhaled heavily. "She deserves to be happy," Ben said, his voice low. "If you can give her that, then fine. I'll step aside." The tension in Noah's chest eased slightly, but he knew this wasn't over. The words had been said, but the emotions behind them, Ben's lingering jealousy, his unresolved feelings, still hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The next day, the tension between the brothers was palpable. Though Ben had agreed to step aside, his behavior told a different story. He avoided Noah during meetings, his responses clipped and his tone sharp. During training sessions, he pushed himself harder than usual, his frustration bleeding into every movement. Sage noticed, of course. She always did. One afternoon, as she was leaving the training grounds, she caught sight of Ben sparring with one of the younger wolves. His strikes were aggressive, his movements almost reckless. It wasn't like him. She hesitated, debating whether to approach him. But before she could decide, Ben's sparring partner called a break, leaving him alone near the edge of the field. Sage took a deep breath and walked over. "Ben," she said, her voice tentative. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before it was replaced by something more guarded. "Sage." She crossed her arms, studying him. "What's going on with you?" You've been off lately. He let out a bitter laugh, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Off? That's one way to put it. Talk to me, she said, her tone softer now. This isn't like you. Ben shook his head, his gaze dropping to the ground. It's nothing, Sage. Just trying to figure some things out. She frowned, stepping closer. Does this have anything to do with Noah? His head snapped up, his eyes narrowing slightly. Why would you think that? Sage hesitated, the weight of his gaze pressing down on her. Because he's been different lately too. And I know you two have history. Complicated history. Ben exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, you could say that. He paused, then added quietly, Look, Sage, I want you to be happy. I mean that. But seeing you with him, it's harder than I thought it'd be. Her chest tightened, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Ben. He held up a hand, cutting her off. You don't have to say anything. I need time. That's all. She nodded slowly, her heart aching for reasons she couldn't quite explain. Take all the time you need. As she walked away, she couldn't help but glance back, her thoughts a tangled mess. Ben had stepped aside, but the tension between him and Noah was far from resolved. And deep down, she knew it wouldn't be. Not until all three of them faced the truth head-on. Later that evening, Noah found Ben in the war room, poring over maps of the Pack's territory. He hesitated in the doorway, watching his brother for a moment before stepping inside. Ben, he said quietly. Ben didn't look up. What do you want, Noah? Noah crossed the room, his footsteps measured. I just wanted to check on you. Ben snorted. You don't have to. I'm fine. Noah frowned but didn't press. Instead, he placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. I meant what I said. I care about you, Ben. And I'll always have your back. Ben finally looked up, his expression softening just slightly. Yeah, I know. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. For now it was enough. We're not there yet, Noah thought as he left the room. But we'll get there. Eventually. Chapter 17. Some wounds run deeper than others. And when the people who share your blood are the ones causing the pain, it feels like there's no way to heal. The evening air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made it hard to breathe. The pack house was unusually quiet, the wolves scattered across the territory on various assignments. Inside the war room, Noah stood over the large oak table, his hands pressed firmly against its surface as he studied the maps spread out before him. His wolf stirred uneasily, sensing the tension that had been simmering all day. The door creaked open, and Noah didn't need to turn to know it was Ben. His brother's scent, familiar yet sharp with agitation, filled the room. Noah sighed but didn't look up. What is it, Ben? He asked, his voice calm but clipped. We need to talk, Ben said, his tone tense. Noah straightened, finally meeting Ben's gaze. His brother stood rigid in the doorway, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The storm brewing in his eyes was impossible to ignore. About what? Noah asked, though he already knew the answer. About you. About Sage. About this whole mess you've dragged us into, Ben snapped, stepping further into the room. Noah's jaw tightened, his wolf growling softly in the back of his mind. I haven't dragged anyone into anything, Ben. If this is about Sage... Of course it's about Sage. Ben interrupted, his voice rising. You say you care about me, that you've got my back, but then you go and what? Try to take her from me. Noah's eyes narrowed, his own anger bubbling to the surface. Take her from you? You left her, Ben. You made your choice. Don't put that on me. You think this is that simple, Ben said, his voice dripping with bitterness. You don't understand what it was like, what I felt, what I still feel. Then tell me, Noah said, stepping around the table to face his brother directly. Tell me why you walked away if you still care about her so much. Ben's jaw worked as he struggled to find the words. Because I wasn't enough for her, he said finally, his voice cracking. I saw it in her eyes, Noah. Every time I looked at her, I could see that she needed more than I could give. So I left. I thought I was doing the right thing. Noah's expression softened for a moment, the weight of Ben's words settling over him. But the anger wasn't gone, not completely. And now what? Noah asked. You regret it, so you're lashing out at me? You think you can undo what's already done? Ben stepped closer, his eyes blazing. What I think is that you didn't even wait, Noah. The moment I was out of the picture, you were right there. Like a vulture, circling. Noah's wolf surged forward, his growl deep and guttural. Watch your words, Ben. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Ben spat. I've seen the way you look at her. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? Waiting for me to screw up so you could swoop in and play the hero. The accusation hit harder than Noah expected, but he didn't back down. You don't get to put this on me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You made your choice. You left her, and you left the pack. I'm just trying to pick up the pieces you broke. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Ben's face twisted with anger, and for a moment, Noah thought he might swing at him. But instead, Ben turned away, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. You don't get it, Ben muttered, more to himself than to Noah. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The alpha who can do no wrong. But you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. To always be second best. Noah's fists clenched at his sides, his wolf growling louder. This isn't about being second best, Ben. This is about you not being able to face the consequences of your own choices. Ben whirled on him, his eyes blazing. And you think you're any better? You think Sage deserves someone like you? You're so caught up in being the alpha, in trying to fix everyone else's problems, that you don't even see your own. The words hit their mark, but Noah refused to show it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice cold. Believe what you want, Ben. But I won't apologize for caring about her. And I won't let your jealousy ruin this pack. Ben's shoulders tensed, his breathing heavy. For a moment, it looked like he might say something else, something final. But then he shook his head, his expression hardening. Do what you want, Noah, he said, his voice quiet but sharp. But don't expect me to stand by and watch. With that, he turned and stormed out of the room, leaving Noah alone in the heavy silence. The door slammed shut behind him, the sound echoing through the pack house. Noah stood there for a long time, his mind racing. His wolf was restless, pacing in his mind, its growls a low hum in the background. He's hurting, his wolf said after a while. Noah exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I know. But knowing didn't make it easier. The bond between him and Ben felt like it was fraying, unraveling thread by thread. And as much as he wanted to fix it, he didn't know how. He's your brother, his wolf said, its voice softer now. He'll come around, but not until he faces his own demons. Noah nodded, though the words did little to ease the ache in his chest. For now, all he could do was focus on the pack and on Sage. That night, as Noah sat alone in his room, the weight of the confrontation settled over him like a heavy cloak. He thought of Sage, of her quiet strength, and the way she had begun to rebuild herself. He thought of Ben, of the pain in his brother's eyes, and the jealousy that had poisoned their bond. I can't fix everything, he thought, his hands tightening into fists, but I won't let this tear us apart. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, a reminder that the battles they faced weren't just with the rogues, but with each other. Chapter 18. The forest stretched endlessly around me, its towering trees forming a canopy that dappled the ground with patches of sunlight. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, and the soft rustle of leaves underfoot was the only sound. It was the perfect place to clear my mind, or at least, that's what I told myself. I carried my journal with me, its leather cover worn and familiar beneath my fingers. Writing had become my solace in the months since Ben had left, a way to untangle the mess of emotions that swirled inside me. But today felt different, heavier, like the weight of everything was pressing down all at once. I found my usual spot near the river, a flat rock that overlooked the water. Sitting down, I opened the journal and stared at the blank page. The pen hovered over it, the words refusing to come at first. But slowly they began to spill out, messy and raw. I don't know what's happening to me. Or maybe I do, and I'm just too scared to admit it. I paused, the pen trembling slightly in my hand. My wolf stirred inside me, her presence calm but insistent. She had been quieter lately, watching, waiting. But whenever Noah was near, she came alive, her energy surging in a way that was impossible to ignore. It's him. It's always him. The way he looks at me, the way he speaks to me, the way he makes me feel like I'm more than just the broken girl I used to be. It terrifies me, The words were stark on the page, their honesty cutting deeper than I expected. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the river fill the silence. My wolf knows. She's known for a while now. She craves him in a way I've never felt before, not even with Ben. It's deeper, stronger, like every part of me is drawn to him. And I don't know what to do with that. I set the pen down, my hands trembling. My wolf growled softly, a sound of agreement and longing. She didn't understand my hesitation, my fear. To her, the answer was simple. Noah was ours. Fate had decided, and it wasn't her nature to fight it. But I wasn't just my wolf. I was me, and the memories of what had happened with Ben were scars that hadn't fully healed. Letting myself feel this, letting myself believe that Noah could be my mate, felt like opening those wounds all over again. He's everything I've tried to avoid since Ben left. Strong, steady, someone I could actually depend on. And that scares me more than anything, because if I let myself believe in this, and it falls apart, I don't know if I'll survive it. I stared at the page, my chest tightening. The fear was like a living thing inside me, coiling around my heart and whispering doubts into my mind. But there was something else, too, something quieter but just as powerful. Hope. But then he looks at me, and for a moment I forget. I forget the fear, the doubt, the scars. I see the way he sees me, and it's like he's telling me without words that I'm enough, that I'm more than enough. My throat tightened, and I closed the journal, unable to write anymore. The weight of my own words was too much to bear. I leaned back against the rock, staring up at the sky through the gaps in the trees. My wolf stirred again, her voice a soft murmur in the back of my mind. You can't keep running. You're his. You know it. I swallowed hard, my hands clenching into fists. What if I can't handle it? I whispered aloud, the words swallowed by the forest. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The truth was already there, buried beneath the fear and the doubt. I was falling for Noah, and no amount of denial could change that. The sound of footsteps broke through my thoughts, and I sat up, my senses sharpening. A moment later, Joan appeared, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. There you are, she said, crossing her arms. I've been looking for you. You're not sneaking off to brood, are you? I managed a small smile. Maybe a little. Joan sat down beside me, her gaze drifting to the river. You okay? I hesitated, the words caught in my throat. But Joan had a way of waiting you out, her silence as effective as any question. Finally I sighed. It's Noah, I admitted. I don't know what to do. Her eyebrows shot up, and a grin tugged at the corner of her mouth. Well, this is new. Go on, I'm listening. I shook my head, laughing softly despite myself. It's not funny. It's a little funny, she said, nudging me. Come on, Sage. Talk to me. I looked down at my hands, the vulnerability making me feel exposed. It's just complicated. He makes me feel things I didn't think I could feel again. But it's terrifying, Joan. What if I mess it up? What if it ends the way it did with Ben? Joan's expression softened, and she placed a hand on my shoulder. Listen to me, Sage. You're not the same person you were with Ben. And Noah, he's not Ben. If you feel something for him, if your wolf feels something, you owe it to yourself to at least try. Her words settled over me like a bomb, soothing but not erasing the fear. I nodded slowly, the weight in my chest easing just slightly. As I walked back to the pack house that evening, my journal tucked under my arm, I couldn't stop thinking about what Joan had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. But even as the thought took root, the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't quite escape. One step at a time, I thought, the sound of the river fading behind me. That's all I can do. Chapter 19. Jealousy doesn't whisper, it screams, clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be heard. And when it's ignored for too long, it burns everything in its path. The night was quiet, the kind of silence that made you uneasy if you paid attention to it for too long. The moon hung high above the forest, its silvery light casting eerie shadows across the trees. I walked through the woods, my journal tucked under my arm, drawn once again to the river. It had become my haven, the one place where the noise in my head seemed to quiet. But tonight something felt different. The forest was too still, the usual hum of nocturnal life absent. My wolf stirred uneasily, her senses heightened. I paused, glancing around. the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. And then I heard it, a rustle in the underbrush, faint but deliberate. I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called, my voice steady despite the unease creeping into my chest. For a moment, there was no response. Then, a figure stepped out from the shadows, her movements deliberate and filled with a chilling confidence. Lyra. She stood there, her arms crossed, her expression calm but her eyes burning with something darker. Her presence sent a ripple of unease through me, and my wolf bristled, readying herself. "Lyra," I said cautiously, "what are you doing out here?" She tilted her head, a small, humorless smile playing on her lips. "I could ask you the same thing. Always wandering off, aren't you, Sage? Like you don't belong anywhere." The words were sharp, cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. I straightened, meeting her gaze. "If you've got something to say, just say it." Her smile faded, and for a moment, the mask she wore slipped, revealing the raw anger beneath. "Fine. I'll say it. You don't belong here, Sage. You never have. You're not one of us. You're a charity case and nobody. And yet, somehow, you've managed to worm your way into places you don't deserve to be." The venom in her voice sent a chill through me, but I refused to back down. "You don't get to decide who belongs and who doesn't," I said, my voice firm. "The pack isn't about bloodlines or status. It's about loyalty, about strength. And I've earned my place." Lyra laughed, the sound cold and hollow. "Strength? Loyalty? Don't make me laugh, Sage. You're nothing more than a weak little girl pretending to be something you're not. And now you're trying to take what's mine." The accusation hit me like a blow. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes narrowed, her wolf shining through in the glint of her gaze. "Noah," she said, her voice a low growl. "You think I haven't noticed? The way he looks at you, the way he defends you, that's supposed to be me. I'm the one who's meant to stand beside him, not you." I stared at her, the realization dawning like a sudden storm. "This is about him. You're doing all of this because you're jealous." Her smile returned, but it was colder this time, her wolf practically radiating malice. "Jealousy? Oh, Sage, this is so much bigger than that. You don't just threaten my place with Noah. You threaten everything. The pack, the elders, the traditions. You don't belong, and I'm going to make sure everyone remembers that." Before I could respond, she reached into the satchel slung over her shoulder and pulled out a glass jar filled with some kind of liquid. My stomach dropped as the smell hit me. It was a portion of whatever, but as soon as it hit me I became weak, instantly not collapsing to the ground but unable to move easily. She pushed me to the ground. "Lyra, don't," I said, my voice filled with warning. "This isn't going to solve anything," I said with little strength I had. She smirked, twisting the lid off the jar. "Oh, but it will. Once you're gone, everything will go back to the way it's supposed to be." Fire roared to life instantly, the flames leaping hungrily at the trees. Heat engulfed the clearing, the smoke thick and suffocating. "Lyra!" I tried to shout, but she was already backing away, her expression cold and detached. "Goodbye, Sage," she said, her voice calm. "No one's going to miss you." And then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows as the fire spread around me. Panic surged through me as the flames closed in, their heat searing my skin. My wolf howled in my mind, desperate to take control, but the smoke was thick, choking me, making it hard to think. "Stay calm," I told myself, my voice a shaky whisper. "You've faced worse than this." But had I? The fire was relentless, its roar deafening as it consumed everything in its path. I stumbled, coughing as the smoke filled my lungs, my vision blurring. My wolf growled, urging me to move, to fight, but my body felt heavy, sluggish. I managed to stagger toward the river, the cool scent of water cutting through the smoke. But the flames were faster, their heat pressing against my back like a living thing. As I reached the edge of the clearing, a branch snapped above me, and I barely had time to look up before it came crashing down, blocking my path. The fire surged around me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly helpless. "Noah," I thought, his face flashing in my mind. "Joan. Someone. Please." But the forest was empty, the silence broken only by the crackle of flames and the sound of my own labored breathing. "This can't be the end," I thought, my wolf's growl fading as exhaustion took hold. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was the river. So close yet impossibly far. The flames reflecting off its surface like liquid fire. Chapter 20. In a pack, everyone has a role, a duty to fulfill. But sometimes, the bonds between individuals matter more than duty. And sometimes, those bonds are the only thing standing between life and death. Joan was restless. It wasn't unusual for her to be up late, but tonight something felt off. The air carried an unnatural stillness, and her wolf stirred uneasily, pacing in the back of her mind. She sat in the pack house's common room, sharpening her favorite blade, but her focus kept slipping. Every sound outside made her ears perk up, her instincts whispering that something was wrong. She glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, and most of the pack had turned in for the night. But Sage was still nowhere to be found. Joan frowned, her wolf growling softly. "Where is she?" she murmured to herself, standing abruptly. Sage often wandered off to clear her head, but she usually returned before it got this late. Joan grabbed her jacket and stepped out into the cool night air. The moon cast an eerie glow over the forest, and the distant sound of crickets filled the silence. She inhaled deeply, her wolf focusing on Sage's scent. It was faint but present, leading her toward the woods. She's probably at the river, Joan thought, trying to reassure herself. But as she moved deeper into the forest, her unease grew. The usual hum of nocturnal life was gone, replaced by an unsettling quiet. And then she smelled it. Smoke. Joan froze, her wolf snarling to life. The scent was faint at first, but it grew stronger as she moved towards Sage's usual spot by the river. Her heart pounded in her chest as a first flicker of orange light appeared through the trees. "No," she whispered, breaking into a sprint. When she reached the clearing, the sight that greeted her sent a wave of panic through her. Flames roared through the forest, consuming everything in their path. The heat was overwhelming, and the air was thick with smoke. Joan scanned the area frantically, her eyes stinging as she searched for any sign of Sage. "Sage!" she shouted, her voice hoarse. "Sage! Where are you?" There was no response, but she caught a glimpse of something through the haze. A figure slumped near the edge of the clearing, blocked by a fallen tree. Joan's heart clenched. "Hang on, I'm coming!" she yelled, her wolf surging forward. The flames licked at her heels as she moved closer, her jacket shielding her from the worst of the heat. She reached the tree and saw Sage lying on the ground, her face pale and her breathing shallow. "Damn it, Sage," Joan muttered, dropping to her knees. She checked her pulse, weak but steady. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived. The fire was closing in, and there was no way she could carry Sage out on her own. Joan's mind raced. She needed help, and she needed it fast. But most of the pack was asleep, and even if they weren't, not everyone would jump at the chance to save Sage. The divide in the pack over her presence was still too fresh, the scars of old prejudices too deep. But there was one person who wouldn't hesitate. Noah was in his office, poring over maps and reports, when Joan burst in. Her hair was singed, her clothes covered in soot, and her face streaked with ash. She didn't wait for him to speak. "It's Sage," she said, her voice urgent. "She's trapped. There's a fire at her spot by the river." Noah was already moving before she finished speaking. He grabbed his jacket and followed her out, his wolf growling with a mix of fear and fury. "What happened?" he demanded as they ran through the forest. "I don't know," Joan admitted. "But it's bad, Noah. The fire's spreading fast, and she's unconscious. I couldn't get her out on my own." The thought of Sage trapped in the flames sent a surge of adrenaline through Noah. His wolf howled in his mind, its desperation matching his own. He pushed himself harder, his feet pounding against the earth as they neared the clearing. The sight of the fire was worse than Noah had imagined. The flames illuminated the night, their roar deafening. The heat was suffocating, and the smoke stung his eyes, but none of that mattered. He saw her. Sage was still lying near the fallen tree, the fire creeping dangerously close. For a moment, time seemed to slow, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "I'm going in," he said, his voice firm. Joan grabbed his arm, her expression grim. "Be careful, Noah. The fire's unstable. One wrong move, and—" "I won't let her die," he said, cutting her off. "Not here. Not like this." Joan nodded, stepping back as Noah shifted into his wolf. His massive frame surged forward, his black fur a stark contrast to the orange glow of the flames. He moved with precision, his wolf's instincts guiding him through the chaos. When he reached Sage, he shifted back, his hands trembling as he checked her pulse again. Relief washed over him when he felt it, still weak, but still there. "Hang on, Sage," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the roar of the fire. "I've got you." Chapter 21. When the world burns around you, survival isn't just about strength, it's about trust. Trust in yourself, in those who would risk everything for you, and in the bond that pulls you both through. The heat was unbearable, a living force that clawed at Noah's skin and choked the air from his lungs. The flames roared like a wild beast, their tongues licking at the sky as they devoured everything in their path. Smoke curled around him, thick and acrid, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. But none of it mattered. Not the fire, not the pain, not the danger. All that mattered was Sage. She was slumped against the fallen tree, her face pale and smudged with soot, her chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Noah's heart clenched at the sight of her, his wolf howling in his mind, urging him forward. He crouched beside her, his hands trembling as he touched her shoulder. "Sage," he said, his voice hoarse. "Wake up. Come on, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open briefly, the amber glow of the fire reflecting in them. She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came out. She was too weak, too close to the edge. "I've got you," Noah said, his voice firm despite the panic clawing at him. "I'm not leaving you here." Noah shifted back into his wolf, his powerful frame easily lifting Sage onto his back. Her weight was light, too light, and he could feel the fragility of her body against him. His wolf growled low, the sound of promise to protect her at all costs. The flames closed in as he turned, their heat pressing against him like a physical force. He scanned the area, his sharp eyes searching for the safest path through the inferno. The way back to the clearing was blocked, the flames too high and the ground too unstable. The only option was to head deeper into the forest toward the river. Noah's paws hit the ground with precision, his movements careful but swift as he navigated the burning landscape. The smoke was blinding, and the roar of the fire drowned out all other sounds, but he focused on the rhythm of his breathing, on the steady beat of Sage's pulse against his fur. "Keep going," his wolf urged. "She needs you." The fire seemed to have a mind of its own, its tendrils reaching out to block his path at every turn. A burning branch crashed to the ground just ahead of him, sending sparks flying. Noah skidded to a stop, his muscles coiled with tension as he calculated his next move. "I won't let you have her," he growled under his breath, as if the fire could hear him. With a burst of speed, he leapt over the fallen branch, his wolf's strength propelling them forward. The heat singed his fur, and the smoke burned his throat, but he didn't falter. He couldn't. Sage stirred slightly on his back, her weak voice barely audible over the chaos. "Noah!" The sound of her voice sent a surge of determination through him. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady. "I've got you. Just hold on." She didn't respond, but he felt her fingers curl slightly into his fur, a faint but deliberate movement that told him she was still fighting. The river was just ahead, its cool scent cutting through the acrid smoke like a lifeline. Noah pushed himself harder, his lungs burning and his legs trembling with the effort. The ground beneath him shifted dangerously, the fire consuming everything in its path, but he didn't stop. Finally, they broke through the wall of flames and reached the riverbank. Noah collapsed onto the cool, damp earth, his chest heaving as he shifted back to his human form. He gently lowered Sage to the ground, cradling her in his arms. "Sage," he said urgently, brushing her hair back from her face. "Come on, wake up. Open your eyes." Her eyelids fluttered, and she let out a weak cough, the sound both heartbreaking and relieving. She opened her eyes, her gaze unfocused but searching. When they landed on him, a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "You came for me," she whispered. Noah's throat tightened and he nodded. "Of course I did. I'll always come for you." The danger wasn't entirely over. The fire still burned behind them, its glow casting eerie shadows across the riverbank. But for now they were safe. Noah held Sage close, his arm steady despite the exhaustion that threatened to pull him under. You scared the hell out of me, he said softly, his voice raw. Don't ever do that again. Sage let out a weak laugh, her head resting against his chest. I wasn't exactly planning on it. They sat there, the world around them fading into the background. The fire was a distant roar now, and the cool air of the river was a balm to their battered bodies. As Sage regained some of her strength, she looked up at Noah, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. You didn't have to come for me, she said quietly. You could have let someone else. Stop, Noah interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. I couldn't let someone else. It had to be me. Her brow furrowed, confusion and vulnerability flickering across her face. Why? Noah hesitated, his heart pounding. This wasn't the time or place for confessions, but the words were there, hanging in the air between them. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you're my mate, Sage. I've known it for a long time, and I'm done pretending I don't feel it. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she was silent, her breath hitching as his words sank in. Her wolf stirred, a soft growl of agreement rumbling in the back of her mind. Noah, she began, her voice trembling. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing against her cheek. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Sage closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. The fire might have been behind them, but the emotional blaze between them was just beginning. Chapter 22. Strength isn't just about muscles or power. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice, what you'll risk to save the ones who matter most. The fire wasn't done with us. Even as the cool river soothed the worst of the heat and smoke, the flames roared on, claiming everything they touched. The forest crackled and groaned under its assault, trees swaying dangerously as their roots burned. I could feel the ground beneath us shift, the air alive with the chaos of destruction. Noah stood, his arm around me as he steadied himself. He was pale, his breath labored, but his grip on me was firm, reassuring. We need to move, he said, his voice hoarse but steady. The fire's spreading. We're not safe here. I nodded, my wolf urging me forward even as my legs protested. The adrenaline coursing through me masked the worst of my fatigue, but I knew we were both running on borrowed time. We began to move, staying close to the riverbank where the fire was less intense. The plan was simple. Follow the water until we found a safe path out. But nothing about this night had been simple. The sound of cracking would echo through the forest, sharp and sudden. I barely had time to react before a massive tree, its base consumed by fire, came crashing down. The earth trembled beneath its weight, and in the chaos, I lost sight of Noah. Noah! I shouted, panic tightening my chest. I turned to see him pinned beneath the massive trunk, his body twisted awkwardly. His face was contorted in pain, and his wolf growled weakly, its strength sapped by the ordeal. Sage, he rasped, his voice strained. Go! Get out of here! The words ignited something in me, a fierce, unrelenting defiance. No, I said, my voice firm. I'm not leaving you. He shook his head, his eyes pleading. You have to. The fire. I don't care about the fire. I snapped, dropping to my knees beside him. I'm not leaving you, Noah. Don't ask me to. The trunk was massive, its weight pressing down on him with unyielding force. I tried to lift it, but it didn't budge. My hands were shaking, my muscles screaming in protest, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Come on, I growled, my wolf pushing me forward. Move! The fire crackled closer, the heat searing against my skin, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was Noah, his shallow breaths, the pain etched into his face, the way his wolf stirred weakly as if willing me to succeed. Sage, stop, he said again, his voice softer now. You can't. Yes, I can, I said through gritted teeth. You're not giving up, Noah. Not here. Not like this. I dug my feet into the ground, my hands gripping the edge of the trunk. My wolf roared in my mind, her strength surging through me like a tidal wave. Slowly, inch by inch, the tree began to shift. Noah groaned in pain as the pressure eased, and I froze for a moment, my heart hammering. I'm sorry, I whispered. Just hold on, okay? He nodded weakly, his eyes locked on mine. I trust you, he murmured. With a final surge of strength, I lifted the trunk enough to slide it off him. The effort left me gasping, my arms trembling as I collapsed beside him. But there was no time to rest. The fire was closing in, and we were running out of options. "Noah, can you stand?" I asked, my voice urgent. He tried, but his legs gave out beneath him. He shook his head, frustration and pain flashing across his face. "I've got you," I said, determination hardening my tone. "Just hang on." I hooked my arms under his shoulders, my wolf lending me every ounce of her strength. Slowly I lifted him, his weight a challenge but not impossible. I could feel his breath against my neck, weak but steady, and it fueled me forward. "You don't have to do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice fierce. "You do the same for me." Step by step, I carried him away from the fire, the flames snapping at our heels. My legs felt like they were going to give out, my lungs burning with every breath, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Noah's life depended on it. The riverbank grew wider, the ground more stable, and finally, we reached a small clearing where the fire hadn't yet spread. I lowered him gently to the ground, collapsing beside him as exhaustion overtook me. "You're insane," he said weakly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I laughed, though it sounded more like a sob. "You're welcome." He reached for my hand, his fingers brushing against mine. "You saved me," he said, his voice filled with something I couldn't quite name. I squeezed his hand, my own trembling. "I wasn't going to lose you." The night stretched on, the fire slowly dying in the distance. We stayed there in the clearing, too exhausted to move, the silence between us heavy but comforting. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to let go of the fear, the doubt, the walls I had built around myself. Noah was alive. We were alive. And for now, that was enough. Strength isn't about standing alone, I thought, my wolf settling peacefully in the back of my mind. It's about knowing when to lean on someone else. And tonight, we leaned on each other. Chapter 23. Secrets have a way of unraveling, no matter how tightly you try to hold them. And when the truth comes out, it doesn't just reveal, it destroys. The sun rose over the packlands, its light illuminating the charred remnants of the forest. Smoke still lingered in the air, a ghostly reminder of the fire that had ravaged the territory. The pack had worked tirelessly through the night to contain the blaze, but the damage was undeniable. The once vibrant forest now stood in ruins, a scar on the land that mirrored the tension hanging over the pack. In the courtyard of the pack house, a crowd had gathered. The whispers and murmurs were electric, a mix of curiosity and outrage as the wolves waited for the alpha to speak. Noah stood at the front, his presence commanding even though his body was still recovering from the ordeal. Beside him, Joan stood with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. I stood off to the side, my arms wrapped around myself as I watched the scene unfold. My body ached, and the events of the night still played on a loop in my mind. But I was here, alive, safe, and I had Noah to thank for that. And now, the truth was about to come out. Noah's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs. Last night, the fire that nearly destroyed our territory and took the life of one of our own wasn't an accident. The crowd erupted into a wave of shocked gasps and muttered questions. Noah raised a hand, and the noise subsided. "We've identified the person responsible," he continued, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "And their actions will not go unanswered." From the back of the gathering, Lyra stepped forward, her movements hesitant but defiant. Her expression was calm, but her wolf's unease radiated off her in waves. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice sharp. "You can't possibly think I had anything to do with this." Joan stepped forward, holding up a small glass jar, the same kind Lyra had used to spread the fire. Its scent was unmistakable. "We found this near the scene," Joan said, her voice cold. "Your scent is all over it, Lyra. Don't bother denying it." The crowd turned their attention to Lyra, their expressions a mix of disbelief and anger. She raised her chin, her lips curling into a bitter smile. "Of course you'd blame me," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The outcast gets herself into trouble, and suddenly I'm the villain. How convenient." Noah's eyes darkened, his wolf growling softly in the back of his mind. "You're not being accused without evidence, Lyra. We know what you did. We know you set that fire, And we know why. Lyra's composure cracked for a moment, her eyes flashing with fury. Why? Because I wanted to protect this pack. Protect it from someone who doesn't belong. Sage is a nobody, a stain on this pack's legacy. And you, she pointed at Noah, her voice rising. You've let her blind you. You're supposed to be our alpha, but you're acting like a lovesick fool. The words hit like a thunderclap, and the crowd erupted again, their voices a chaotic mix of shock and outrage. Noah raised his hand again, silencing them with a single commanding gesture. This isn't about Sage, he said, his voice steady but cold. This is about you. About your jealousy, your entitlement, and your willingness to endanger the lives of your packmates to satisfy your own bitterness. Lyra's wolf surged forward, her growl low and menacing. You think you can lecture me? After everything I've done for this pack? I've trained, I've fought, I've bled for this pack. While she's done nothing. Joan stepped forward, her expression icy. She saved Noah's life. She's been rebuilding herself piece by piece while you've been tearing others down. If you can't see the difference, then you don't deserve to call yourself one of us. The weight of their words finally broke through Lyra's defenses. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked small, vulnerable. But then her eyes hardened, her defiance flaring once more. Fine, she said, her voice shaking but firm. Exile me. Cast me out. But don't pretend this pack is better off with her in it. Noah stepped closer, his gaze unrelenting. You've made your choice, Lyra. You betrayed this pack, and you betrayed everything we stand for. You're no longer welcome here. The finality of his words hung heavy in the air. Lyra's wolf growled, but she didn't argue. She turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high even as the pack watched her go. As the crowd dispersed, the weight of what had happened settled over me. Noah approached, his expression softening as he reached out to touch my shoulder. You okay? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, though the emotions swirling inside me were hard to put into words. I didn't expect it to end like this. It needed to, he said firmly. For the pack. For you. I looked up at him, the warmth in his eyes grounding me. Thank you, I said quietly. For everything. He smiled, a small but genuine thing. You don't have to thank me, Sage. I'll always protect you. For the first time in a long time I felt safe. Truly safe. And as the sun rose higher, casting its light over the damaged forest, I realized that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to heal. Chapter 24. Respect isn't given. It's earned through every choice, every sacrifice, and every moment you stand your ground, even when the odds are against you. The Elder's Chamber was a place of history and tradition, its stone walls etched with the stories of the pack's greatest triumphs and darkest days. I had only been here once before, years ago, when I was still too young and too naive to understand the weight this room carried. Now, as I stood in its center, all eyes on me, the weight was almost suffocating. The elders sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from neutral to skeptical. They were the pillars of the pack, the voices of wisdom and guidance. But they were also the gatekeepers of tradition, and I knew that many of them still saw me as an outsider. Noah stood beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. His hand brushed against mine briefly, a silent promise that I wasn't alone in this. We are here, Elder Marcus began, his deep voice echoing in the chamber, to discuss the events of the past days and their implications for the future of our pack. His sharp gaze landed on me, and I met it without flinching. Sage, he continued, his tone measured. You have been at the center of much upheaval lately. Some of it unavoidable, some of it not. But before we proceed, we would like to hear from you directly. What do you have to say for yourself? I took a deep breath, my wolf stirring inside me. She was calm, her confidence lending me strength. I know I don't come from a strong bloodline, I began, my voice steady. I know I'm not what many of you expected when you think of someone standing beside your alpha. But everything I've done, everything I've fought for, has been for this pack. I looked around the room, meeting each elder's gaze. When the rogues attacked, I stood with you. When the fire raged, I fought to protect the pack. And when one of our own betrayed us, I stayed loyal. Not because I had to, but because this pack is my family. It's the only family I have left. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My heart pounded, but I didn't let it show. I may not have been born into this pack, I continued, my voice growing stronger, but I've earned my place here. And I will keep earning it every day, if that's what it takes. The silence stretched on, the elders exchanging glances. Finally, Elder Miriam, one of the oldest and most respected among them, leaned forward. You've shown courage, she said, her tone softer than I expected. And loyalty. But those alone are not enough to lead beside our alpha. Do you truly believe you are ready for the responsibility that comes with that role? I hesitated, not because I doubted my answer, but because I wanted them to see the sincerity in my words. I'm ready to try, I said finally. I'm ready to learn, to grow, and to be the mate Noah deserves. I know I won't be perfect, but I'll never stop fighting for this pack. Noah stepped forward then, his voice cutting through the tension. She doesn't have to prove herself to me, he said firmly. I've seen her strength, her heart, and her dedication. Sage is my fated mate. That's not up for debate. His words sent a ripple through the room, the finality of them impossible to ignore. For a moment, the elders looked as if they might argue, but then Elder Marcus nodded slowly. Very well, he said, his voice heavy with authority. Sage, your actions have indeed shown a commitment to this pack that cannot be denied. You've faced challenges that would have broken others, and you've stood firm. If Noah believes in you, then we will too. Relief flooded through me, but I kept my expression steady, not wanting to show how much their approval meant. Elder Miriam smiled faintly. Welcome to the pack, Sage. Truly. As Noah and I left the chamber, the tension that had gripped me finally began to ease. The weight I'd carried for so long, the doubt, the fear of not belonging lifted, replaced by something new. Noah reached for my hand, his touch grounding me. You did it, he said softly. I looked up at him, a small smile tugging at my lips. We did it. His eyes softened, his wolf shining through for a moment. You've always belonged here, Sage. I'm just glad they finally see it, too. That evening, the pack gathered in the courtyard to celebrate. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter and warmth as the wolves came together to honor the victories of the past days. I stood beside Noah, the glow of the firelight reflecting in his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. As the night wore on, wolves came up to me, wolves who had once kept their distance, offering kind words and gestures of acceptance. Even Joan, always the first to tease, pulled me into a warm hug. About time they caught up, she said with a grin. I've always known you were one of us. By the end of the night, as the fire burned low and the pack began to disperse, I found myself standing beside Noah, looking out over the charred forest. It's going to take time to rebuild, I said, my voice quiet. He nodded, his gaze steady. We'll do it together. His words held a promise, one that went beyond the forest, beyond the pack. It was a promise of a future, of a bond that couldn't be broken. And for the first time, I believed it. Chapter 25. Some moments feel like the world stops turning, like time itself bends just for you. And in those moments, you realize that home isn't a place. It's a person. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that wrapped around you like a blanket. The stars glittered above us, scattered across the sky like shards of light, their brilliance undimmed by the charred forest around us. The pack had retreated to their homes, their laughter and celebration fading into the soft hum of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. Noah and I lingered by the edge of the clearing, the remnants of the fire pit glowing faintly behind us. The warmth of the night was comforting, but it was the presence of Noah beside me that made everything feel safe. We hadn't spoken much since the elders' decision earlier in the day. The weight of everything, Lyra's betrayal, the fire, the pack's acceptance, had settled over us like a storm finally quieted. But now, standing here with him, I felt like the calm was finally settling in. Noah broke the silence first. You did it, you know. I turned to look at him, his profile illuminated by the soft light of the moon. Did what? He glanced at me, his lips curving into a small smile. Prove them all wrong. The elders, the pack, even yourself. You showed them how strong you are. His words hit me harder than I expected, and I found myself looking away, my chest tightening. I wasn't trying to prove anything, I said quietly. I just wanted to belong. He stepped closer, his presence steady and grounding. You've always belonged, Sage. The only one who didn't see it was you. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, a soft laugh escaping me. You always know the right thing to say, don't you? Not always, he admitted, his voice lighter now. But when it comes to you, it's easy. You make it easy. We stood there for a moment, the silence between us comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. Finally, Noah reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. I looked up at him, my heart skipping a beat at the warmth in his eyes. You've been through so much, he said softly. And yet you're still standing, still fighting. Do you know how incredible that is? I shook my head, the words catching in my throat. I'm not as strong as you think, Noah. I was so scared during the fire. If it weren't for you, I don't think I would have made it. He tilted his head, his expression gentle but firm. You saved me, Sage. You didn't hesitate, didn't falter. That's strength. And whether you see it or not, it's what makes you you. His hand found mine then, his fingers lacing through mine with a tenderness that sent warmth flooding through me. I looked down at our joined hands, my wolf stirring softly in the back of my mind. She was quiet but content, her presence a steady hum that mirrored my own feelings. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The pack being your mate? It's so much. Noah's grip on my hand tightened slightly, his voice steady. You don't have to be ready all at once. We'll take it one step at a time. Together. I looked up at him then, his words sinking deep into my heart. There was no pressure in his gaze, no expectation, just a quiet promise. A promise that I didn't have to face any of this alone. The stars seemed to shine brighter as he reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle, his fingers lingering for a moment before trailing down to cup my cheek. I leaned into his hand instinctively, my eyes closing as I let myself feel the warmth of him. You mean so much to me, Sage, he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. More than I think I even realized until now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if I have to. My breath caught, and I opened my eyes to find him watching me, his gaze steady and full of something I couldn't quite name, but I felt it, deep in my bones. You already have, I said softly, my voice trembling. The space between us seemed to disappear as he leaned in, his forehead resting gently against mine. The world around us faded, the charred forest, the stars, everything, until it was just us. I could feel his breath against my lips, his closeness a comfort I hadn't realized I craved. Sage, he murmured, his voice barely audible. You're my mate, my home, and nothing will ever change that. The words broke something open inside me, and before I could stop myself, I closed the distance between us, my lips brushing against his in a kiss that was soft and tentative but full of everything I couldn't say. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around me as he pulled me closer. The kiss deepened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the fear and doubt melted away, replaced by a warmth that filled every corner of my being. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine again, both of us breathing hard but smiling. I guess this is the part where we figure out what happens next, I said, my voice shaky but light. Noah chuckled, his thumb brushing against my cheek. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's all that matters. As we stood there under the stars, the weight of the past few days seemed to lift, replaced by something new, something stronger. And for the first time, I let myself believe that this, Noah, the pack, this bond we shared could be my home. Because maybe home wasn't a place, maybe it was a person. And Noah was mine. Chapter 26. A pack is only as strong as its bonds, as resilient as its leaders. And now, I wasn't just a part of it, I was standing at the forefront beside him. The sun was just beginning to rise over the pack lands, its golden rays painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The morning air carried the faint chill of dawn, a quiet calm that belied the tension simmering beneath the surface. The pack was awake and bustling, preparing for what was to come. The rogues weren't going to stop. That much was clear. The attack on the eastern border, The calculated ambushes, the fire, it was all part of a larger plan. And now, the pack had to be ready. We had to be ready. I stood near the training grounds, watching as wolves of all ranks sparred and strategized. Joan barked orders, her voice sharp but encouraging, while Noah moved between groups, his presence commanding yet steady. He had a way of inspiring loyalty with just a glance, and as I watched him, I felt a surge of pride and something deeper. This was my pack now. These were my people. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. Noah approached me, his expression calm but focused. His dark eyes scanned my face, softening slightly as they met mine. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice low. I smiled faintly, my hands brushing against the hem of my jacket. "I'm okay. Just trying to take it all in." He nodded, his gaze shifting to the training grounds. "It's a lot, but you're handling it." I glanced at him, my chest tightening at the quiet confidence in his voice. "I don't want to let you down," I admitted. He turned back to me, his hand reaching out to touch my arm. "You could never let me down, Sage. You've already proven yourself over and over. The pack sees it. I see it." His words were a balm to the lingering doubt that still whispered in the back of my mind. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "What's the plan for today?" Noah gestured toward the far side of the training grounds, where the betas were gathered around a large map spread out on a table. "We're finalizing patrol routes and defense strategies. The rogues are regrouping, and we need to be ready for anything." I followed him as he walked toward the table, my steps falling into rhythm with his. The betas looked up as we approached, their expressions a mix of respect and determination. "Sage," one of them said, nodding in acknowledgement. "Glad you're here." The simple words sent a flicker of warmth through me. It wasn't long ago that I would have been ignored, or worse, dismissed outright. But now, standing beside Noah, I felt their acceptance. It was a tentative thing, fragile and new, but it was there. Joan joined us, her sharp eyes scanning the map. "We need to focus on the northern border," she said, tapping a spot on the map with her finger. "That's where they'll hit next. It's the least fortified, and they know it." Noah nodded. "Agreed. We'll rotate the patrols to cover more ground." "Sage, I want you with Joan on the first patrol." I blinked, surprised. "You want me out there?" "You're ready," he said simply. "And the pack needs to see it." The patrol began later that afternoon, the air tense with anticipation. Joan led the group, her movements confident and precise as she directed the wolves into formation. I stayed close to her, my senses sharp as I scanned the forest for any signs of movement. The northern border was quiet, the stillness almost unnerving. The trees stood tall and unyielding, their shadows stretching across the ground like silent sentinels. My wolf stirred inside me, her instincts on high alert. "You're doing great," Joan said quietly, her voice breaking the silence. "Just keep your head up and trust your instincts." I nodded, my grip tightening on the hilt of the dagger strapped to my side. "Do you think they'll come today?" Joan shrugged, her expression unreadable. "Hard to say. But if they do, we'll be ready." By the time we returned to the pack house, the sun was beginning to set, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The patrol had been uneventful, but the tension in the air hadn't eased. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the rogues made their next move. Noah was waiting for us when we arrived, his gaze sweeping over the group before landing on me. His expression softened, and he stepped forward, his hand brushing against mine as we walked side by side toward the fire pit. "How is it?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. "Too quiet." He nodded, his jaw tightening. "They're testing us, trying to keep us on edge." "It's working," I admitted, my voice low. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Don't let them get to you. They want us to be scared, to hesitate. But we're stronger than that. You're stronger than that." That evening, as the pack gathered around the fire, I sat beside Noah, his presence a steady comfort. The pack was talking, strategizing, but my mind kept drifting to the future, to what lay ahead. Noah must have sensed my unease because he leaned closer, his voice low. "You're thinking too much." I huffed a quiet laugh, glancing at him. "You think?" He smiled, his hand resting briefly on mine. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this, Sage. You never will be." His words settled over me like a blanket, the warmth of them chasing away the lingering chill of doubt. I looked around at the pack, at the wolves who had become my family, and for the first time, I felt truly ready. As the fire burned low and the stars began to emerge, I leaned into Noah's side, his arm wrapping around me. The rogue threat loomed on the horizon, but for now we were here, together. And that was enough. We'll fight, we'll endure, and we'll win. Because this is my pack now, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. Chapter 27. The future is uncertain, but when you stand together, there's no storm you can't weather, no enemy you can't face. The strength of a pack isn't in its numbers, it's in its unity. The sky was heavy with the weight of dawn, a muted gray that promised rain but hadn't yet delivered. The forest stretched endlessly around the packlands, scarred but resilient, much like the wolves who called it home. The air hummed with an unspoken energy as the pack gathered in the courtyard, their faces a mix of determination and resolve. Noah stood at the forefront, his presence commanding but calm. Beside him, I stood tall, the weight of my new role settling on my shoulders like a second skin. And on my other side, Joan, ever the steady force, stood with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. The three of us, a team forged in fire and bound by trust. Noah's voice rang out, cutting through the early morning quiet. We've been tested by rogues, by betrayal, by fire, and we've come through stronger. But our fight isn't over. The rogues will come again, and when they do, we'll be ready. The pack let out a collective growl of agreement, their energy buzzing in the air like a current. I could feel their loyalty, their trust, and it sent a rush of warmth through me. These wolves weren't just my pack mates, they were my family. Noah glanced at me, his dark eyes filled with quiet pride. He stepped back slightly, giving me the space to speak. My chest tightened for a moment, but then Joan nudged me gently with her elbow, her smirk reassuring. Go on, she murmured. You've got this. I nodded, taking a deep breath before stepping forward. The weight of their gazes was daunting, but my wolf stirred inside me, her strength steadying my nerves. I know I'm new to this role, I began, my voice strong despite the tremble in my chest. I know some of you doubted me, and I don't blame you. But I want you to know that I will fight for this pack with everything I have. This is my home, and all of you are my family. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. The murmurs of approval that rippled through the crowd were subtle but meaningful. I could see it in their faces. The beginnings of trust, the acceptance I had fought so hard to earn. Joan stepped forward next, her usual smirk softened by the seriousness of the moment. All right, enough of the mushy stuff, she said, her tone light but commanding. We've got work to do. Patrol rotations, border reinforcements, and let's not forget, making sure the rogues don't catch us napping again. The pack chuckled, the tension easing slightly. That was Joan's gift, her ability to bring levity even in the darkest moments. Noah nodded, his expression thoughtful. We'll divide into teams and cover every vulnerable point. No one patrols alone, and no one takes unnecessary risks. He glanced at me and Joan, his gaze steady. We lead by example. Together. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Wolves moved with purpose, their energy focused as they fortified the borders and scouted the forest. Joan was everywhere at once, barking orders and keeping morale high. Noah split his time between the patrols and the pack house, his presence a constant reminder of the strength we all drew from him. I found myself in the heart of it all, working alongside wolves who had once kept their distance but now treated me like one of their own. The transformation was subtle but profound, and it filled me with a sense of belonging I hadn't realized I was still searching for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the pack gathered once more around the fire pit. The atmosphere was quieter now, the frenetic energy of the day giving way to a calm resolve. Noah stood at the center, his arm brushing against mine as he addressed the pack. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now we wait. But remember this, we're not just a pack, we're a family. And as long as we stand together, there's nothing we can't overcome. The pack howled in unison, the sound echoing through the night like a battle cry. It sent a shiver down my spine, my wolf surging with pride. Later, as the fire burned low and the pack began to disperse, I stood with Noah and Joan at the edge of the clearing. The three of us were quiet, the weight of the day settling over us. Joan was the first to break the silence, her voice teasing but warm. Well, if the rogues show up tomorrow, at least we'll be ready to give them hell. Noah chuckled, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. That's the plan. Joan turned to me, her grin softening. And you, Sage? Ready to show the world what you're made of? I smiled, the warmth of their support steadying me. More than ready. As Joan left to oversee the final patrols, Noah and I lingered, the forest stretching out before us like an endless promise. He turned to me, his dark eyes filled with a quiet intensity. You did good today, he said softly. I looked up at him, my heart swelling. So did you. He smiled, his hand brushing against mine. We'll get through this, Sage. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. I nodded, my wolf stirring with quiet agreement. Together. And as the stars began to emerge, their light cutting through the darkness, I knew that no matter what the future held, we were ready. Because we weren't just a pack, we were a family.
Like, share and subscribe to show the author support and love.